Hi, folks. I'm Shubham, and this is the first community meetup for Keploy. Um, we have I'm one of the co-founders, and we have Neha as well. She's also a co-founder. We have few other people from the Keploy's team. We have Ritik, Naman, and Sarthak from Keploy's team here as well. And since this is our first meetup, so I'll quickly, uh, first we'll talk about briefly what Keploy is. Then I'll quickly show around how Keploy is built, what is the architecture, and then we can go through a demo and then some future, um, you know, some future features that we're working on. So to begin with, we launched on 22nd Feb, so exactly 3 weeks ago. In fact, not really a launch; it was more of an we open sourced that time, and yeah, since then it has been pretty interesting. We've got pretty interesting traction from the community, lot of interest from enterprise customers as well. So far it has been very interesting. And in summary, what Keploy is trying to do is it's trying to help um, developers and teams to test their APIs and their applications without needing to write code. So we want to make it as seamless as possible, along with the all of the hassle that comes with dealing with dependencies and test data. So automating all of that, making that super streamlined. And to quickly show you how it works, I'll sharing my screen. So Keploy today, it's built in Go, and one interesting fact is we use Keploy to test Keploy. So the 72% coverage that you would be seeing here is from Keploy itself. So we have not written any code to get this coverage. Um, Apart from that, when you go through a README, you can quickly see how you can easily generate test cases just by performing API calls. Um, and we also believe in having a native experience. So instead of introducing our own CLI, introducing our own proprietary integrations, we integrate with the native unit testing framework. So in Go, you have Go test. In case of Java, you have JUnit. So all of those exist, and you can go through the features and try it out. But what makes this special compared to rest of record replay products is how we handle test data and dependencies, right? So whenever you create a test case, we not just record the API calls, but we also record all the database queries, all your anything that you're doing with Kafka, anything you're doing with any Google service, and all of that gets replayed when you're replaying your request. So that's what makes it super special. And typically, people maintain test data, they version test data, or they would write mock queries. They would have test environments. All of those get eliminated, right? So we want to make it a super easy and consistent experience. And I think this image should be kind of self-explanatory in the sense that you know you can record it all of that, and then it gets replayed through Keploy, and you don't need any infrastructure dependencies. In fact, if you look at the pipeline that we use to test Keploy itself, we just use a native Go test pipeline. So you don't need any special tooling to start using Keploy. So that's also something special which Keploy does. Now, what we would do is I'll quickly show you a demo. There's already a demo video, but this will be a bit more detailed demo, which will kind of help you understand how Keploy works today. And it'll be really interesting if you guys can also suggest what you would like to see, or if you have tried Keploy, what problems you saw. It could be related to the onboarding experience. It could be related to your everyday usage experience, right? And definitely while you're contributing. So if you tried contributing to Keploy and you faced a particular challenge or something was not clear, feel free to point it out, and it'll be a cool experience for everybody to work on that. Cool. So like the sample demo which I would give, it's available in the Go samples repository. Right now it's just Gin Mongo. There's already a PR done by somebody from the community for adding Echo and SQL as well, which shows how you can use PostgreSQL. So I'll be sticking to the Gin Mongo demo for this call. And yeah, so what you need to do is very simple. Once you clone Keploy, there's a Docker Compose file. So I'm just stopping it. So you do this Docker Compose up, it will start up Keploy, and this is what Keploy looks like. So right now you can see there's already test cases, and how I generate these test cases very simple. I just need to so I just need to perform these API calls. So once I start this application, so this is that sample application. Once I do start it, right, all I need to do is I need to perform these API calls, right? For example, I could do the post request. In fact, I could change the URL. Let's make it Bing. I can send it, and this particular thing, this is a shortened URL. So if I open this, it should redirect to Bing. So this is a sample application. Now, when I go back to Keploy, I can see now we have two more additional test cases. Now these came from the thing that we just did. I can even, in fact, open them. So the most recent ones are these. So I can see this is a redirect. This was the request, empty body, because it was a GET request. And if I go back, I can see the URL which was returned, what was the timestamp, and what was the request. Now, some things that make Keploy special when you're using it, like when you record these test cases, the timestamps, they'll always be different. So Keploy is smart enough, like we have a very interesting methodology in which we send whenever a test case is generated, we do a second call to understand if there are noisy parameters. So in this case, it's able to automatically figure out that timestamp is going to be a noisy parameter. So when we're testing it, it can be different and it will be ignored. The other interesting thing is dependencies. So in this case, we're using Mongo. So all of these Mongo calls, they are recorded, like the actual responses, the request is recorded. So when now you're going to, do the test, you don't need to have Mongo up and running anymore. So this will be very, very isolated. And yeah, if you want to see what's going behind the scenes, you can go through the raw events. You can see everything in detail. If there's something that's missing in the UI. So like I said, noise, it already added body.ts to the noise automatically. Yeah, so right now we have 4 test cases, and to run it, there are 2 ways. You can just set an environment variable, which we have mentioned in the documentation. So you can do that, or you can use the Go test integration. This is a little more interesting. So you can run this with coverage. And what that's going to do is, okay, so I need to first stop Keploy itself. Wait a minute. Yeah, now run it with coverage. Yeah, so what this is going to do is it's going to download those test cases from the Keploy server, and it's going to run them on this particular application instance. And as you can see, all of those happen. These are logs from the application, and the test case is passed. The interesting thing is that we also have code coverage, right? So normally when you have API testing product, there is no talk of code coverage, which can be a very, very important metric, especially when you're trying to understand the impact of a particular test case. So yeah, we have that. We have 83% test coverage, and since it's native integration, and here I'm using Golang. So Golang has integration with GoTest, and you can see what statements were covered and what were not covered. So this can help you understand, okay, what new lines I need to cover and how I can increase my code coverage. So again, more deeper understanding. Now, these test cases can be generated by anybody. It can be generated from your user traffic. It can be generated by your QA folks, but you have code level insights into understanding, okay, what is the impact of my test cases on my code base. Cool. Now, if I want to, whatever I just ran, I can also go to the UI and I can visualize it. So I can go to test runs, and you can see this is that particular test case. And there are 2 test cases for each endpoint. So here, if I open this up, I can see that it is matching because you know the URL is same, and although the timestamps are different, right? But it's a noisy field, so it's ignored. Um, Same thing for the other test case. It was, I think, for Bing. So that was Bing was a request, and this was the response. And again, you can see dependency and the other stuff. Similar stuff would happen for the other API call, in which again same response, so it passed. Now I'll show you an example of a negative case, right? What happens if you make a problematic code change? So let's change something. So I could, for example, here instead of URLs, maybe I made it URL. Sorry, instead of URL, I'll make it URLs, right? Now, once I do this, I can rerun my test cases. And let's see what happens. So what's supposed to happen here is, since you have changed the response, now some test cases should fail. So 2 of the test cases should fail, and you can see that 2 failed, 2 passed, right? Coverage is same because it's still going through all those code paths. Now, if I go to the UI, I can see that 2 failed and 2 passed, and I can see both of these failed, which were those post requests. And if I see what failed, I can see similar to a diff UI that you see on GitHub. Basically I changed the field, so it's showing me the diff. Now this could be an unexpected behavior, right? Like maybe you changed something like a module within your application, and that affected the API behavior, or it could be an expected change. Now, if it's an expected change, you can actually normalize it. So you can say, from now onwards, I want URL to be URLs. Now, again, for this, you don't have to write any code. Just click this button, and now this is accepted as normal behavior, right? So now this test case, so this is what, this was for the Bing request. And I can similarly also do it for the other request. So here again, accept this as normal, right? Now, once I do this, the test cases are now updated. So if I run this once again, so my test case history won't change, right? Because this is history. This has already happened. I cannot change what already happened. But now this will be applicable for future tests. So when I run this again, now it will be expecting URLs as the parameter. And yeah, so now you can see all the test cases have passed. And I can see if I go here, it's URLs, and that was what was expected. So it's matching the expected outcome. So typically, this is what your development workflow would look like. So you're writing an API, instead of writing a test case, you just record them while you're just using Postman or curl or hopscotch. And whenever you're changing something, you just update, you can just simply normalize it, right? So this kind of like a example of how this overall workflow can be. And the best part is you don't have to worry about your test data, right? That is typically the hardest part. Like, how can you replicate that exact moment, to get that exact response from an API, right? Because APIs can be idempotent. APIs can be, the behavior depends on what's in the database, right? So all of that becomes consistent when you're using something like Keploy. Yep. So that's a quick demo. So do we have any questions regarding the demo before we move forward?
I don't think so.
Cool. Perfect. If you are watching this in the future, maybe on YouTube or any other channel, feel free to post your questions, right? And you can also join a Slack community channel where you can talk about it. Yeah. So moving forward, so like this is the demo, and now we'll talk about some future items that we're working on. So one of the first things that we're working on is on the UI. Currently, the UI is based on Gatsby and React. What we have realized is that since this is a dynamic dashboard, there's a lot of dynamic elements, and it's a relatively simple application, right? So Gatsby is becoming a bit overwhelming. It has a lot of configuration. It has a lot of overhead that we don't need. So in fact, I will share a link to that particular issue, but we are moving to vanilla React. So we're getting rid of Gatsby. We're making the application simpler, and that's also going to help us with improving the routing and better route parameters, so that whenever you're able to whenever you go open a test case detail, you're able to copy paste what you're seeing and send it to your colleagues. So that's something that we've been getting. Apart from that, we are also launching a documentation website soon. So right now we will just have a README. It's becoming very long. We have a lot of information to talk about. So yeah, we are going to have a documentation website. It's also going to be open source, so feel free to contribute to it. Um, it's going to be interesting. So that's coming in the future, in the near future. In fact, launching soon. Another interesting thing that we've been working on is time freezing. So what time freezing means is, essentially what we need here is that we want to replicate the same application behavior, and many things are time sensitive, right? So for example, in this case, we are ignoring the timestamp, right? But what if we need, like, for example, it could be JWT token, right? Or it could be a coupon code. So those are some examples of a time sensitive request. So what happens in that case? So yeah, we are providing an API and also integrations to allow users to also take care of time sensitive problems, right? Um, so yeah, that's coming, and we'll also add a demo for that, where you'll be able to see how you can solve time sensitive use case and build easy test cases for them as well. Um, we also have a TypeScript SDK coming up. So like if you go, you can already see that there's already some work going on here. Rajat, he's one of the contributors. He has started contributing, and there's a lot of interest from some other people for building the SDK. So we have the TypeScript SDK already in development. If you guys are TypeScript or JavaScript developers, I think there's something really exciting to check out. And we're also introducing a separate forum for SDK contributors, right? So um, it will start with a dedicated Slack channel, then dedicated documentation, where you'll get a lot of resources on how you can extend existing SDKs or build new SDKs, right? So that will help with integration with other tooling in the same domain. And yeah, it's going to be super interesting. For example, people want to have Keploy integrations for different CI and CD products. It could be GitHub Actions. There we already support natively, or it could be something Kubernetes native like Captain. So yeah, those things could be really interesting, which are coming in the future. Um, yeah, apart from that, yeah, I think those are some key things that we've been working on. Feel free to chime in if there's something that you like to see. You can talk about it right now, or you can talk about it on our community channels. So yeah, that's it from me. Is there anything? Is there any question? Is there any suggestion, or anything from the Keploy team? Anything from Nia? I'll also share my screen.
No, I think it was good. Thanks for the demo, Shubham. Any questions from the community?
I have few questions.
Yeah.
Like, it is very overwhelming for me to like understanding Keploy for now. Like, it is a API platform, like which is writing test cases and something like that. But I have some questions. Like, do we have plans to build any playground for Keploy? Like, if playground that will help developers to understand Keploy in a better way. And do we have any plans to like make a desktop application like Postman or something like that? Like, in order to run Keploy, I need to first set up it in my local system, need to use Docker and Kubernetes and something like that. So if I'm a like a user, not a contributor, so how can I adopt this technology in a better way, rather than just like trying to setting up in a local environment or something like that?
I think great question, Abhijay. So for a playground experience, right, we've been exploring Gitpod, and also there's this interesting product called
Dev book.
um, DevBook, right? So what that would allow users to do is, so Gitpod, right from Git itself, they'll be able to get a playground where they can play around with Keploy, maybe one of our
Yeah.
sample applications. And with DevBook, we can make a documentation interactive. So any piece of code snippets that you're seeing on the website, you change any of that, it'll update the results that you're seeing below. Um,
Is it something like Storybook? Like,
yeah, like Storybook is more like for UI. This
yeah.
would be more like for code snippets, where
Okay.
yeah. So I think it'll be super interesting. Gitpod is more like a dev playground. In fact, I think
Yeah, yeah.
it's free for open source. So I think that's something we're looking forward to try. In fact, I don't know if you already have an issue for that. We'll add that. It'll be a nice first issue for somebody to try out. Um, yeah, and on the second point, so you talked about so you were talking about
Like
I mean,
In
definitely.
Docker and if we
yeah,
can
yeah,
set
yeah,
up with Docker and Kubernetes.
yeah. So we've got this feedback earlier as well. So we could definitely introduce a native binary. So it's a Go binary, right? It has everything buttoned into it, and Docker just runs that Go binary. So we can also publish binaries, which anybody can just install locally on their laptops, and also add some documentation on using the web service, right? So as a regular developer, if you want a hosted product, right, you can definitely run Keploy locally. But what if you just want something quick?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think uh, adding the native binaries, I think that might help there, and also uh, documenting the sign up process for the hosted product, which people can use, um, without needing to set up anything. Abhijit, does that sound like uh, something which could solve that problem as a user?
Like I think like I don't have that much knowledge about the native binary and stuff, so I need to read more about that. But I think like making a desktop application or maybe playground that will help us in order to like adopt this technology in a very good way. Like I have explored some no code tools as well. Like Postman is also a kind of no code tool. Like you don't need any screen to code and something like that. So yeah, they are also providing a good UI. So maybe like introducing a playground or maybe a desktop app help us in order to solve this problem. So yeah. And
For
one more
sure, for
thing,
sure.
like why we are not using Next.js for better routing?
Um, so we've been having that debate. In fact, we can discuss more on that. I mean, we had a bit of internal discussion on that. I'll post the results there.
Okay.
But so Next.js, like for the current state of our application, we felt, I mean, we could not come up with reasons to actually introduce Next.js. I mean, we can anytime add Next.js when we want to, but we felt like moving out of Gatsby was definitely a good option to simplify the code base. We can add Next.js whenever we want, but for the current routing capabilities, right, that we need and the current overall dashboard, we felt even we don't even need Next.js because we don't need server-side rendering right now. It's a very, very dynamic UI. And I mean, you're open to explore. If it makes sense to have Next.js, why not? So far, we actually couldn't figure out a reason, something that we cannot already do easily in React, or something which Next.js will introduce and make things easy for us. We're not going to really figure that part out yet. Hello.
So yeah, yeah, I got my answers. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
I mean, Next.js is a great framework, super popular.
Yeah.
Um,
So out of Gatsby, we were planning to migrate to Next.js, but the major benefits like server-side rendering or SEO optimization or custom APIs, being able to build that. Uh, in Keploy dashboard, we will not be needing that even in the long run because it's it will be used by developers locally or in their cloud hosted versions. So, you know, those features of Next.js are not really required. And that's why we chose to go with vanilla React.js.
Okay, got it.
and yeah, in future, I mean, since we're just using vanilla React, if we need to move to Next.js, it should be pretty simple. But if you're on some other framework, then it's hard, right? So yeah, I think that was the rationale behind that. And yeah, always simpler is better. So whenever we do need it, we can add it. Anything else? Any other questions? Lots of questions. I mean, thanks, Abhijay. That was great.
Uh, so I have one question. So by the way, great work, guys. So one question is that the example was in Gin, I believe. So are there other integrations like with Gochi or anything else, or
Yep. We currently have integrations. In fact, we use Gochi in Keploy itself. So Gochi definitely exists. And I think we also support a couple of others. We have Echo, and
Yeah,
adding any other integration is also super simple. Right now we have Echo, Gochi. You
Mux.
can see more details on the Go SDK repository. So there's this router section there.
Shubham, your screen is not shared.
No, I mean, in fact, I was just opening up to what one we support. Yeah. So we have Gorilla Mux, we have Chi, we have Echo, we have Jin, and we have Webco, which is a framework written by Book My Show folks. Yep.
and so is there a possibility of integrating HTTP2 with like Keploy, or right now that functionality is not available?
So can you explain what you mean by HTTP2? I mean,
Let's say for like gRPC or something, if I want to test something like that.
yeah. So we're adding. So if you're using HTTP2 with Jin or Echo or Chi, that should work right away. Um, in fact, in Keploy today, like Keploy, because we use Keploy to test Keploy, right? So whatever used by Keploy is already supported, and we use Chi, and then we also use GraphQL. So that thing is supported. But for gRPC, it uses many low-level HTTP2 APIs, and we're currently working on adding support for that. So I mean, we're expecting to add that support in the in the coming month itself. It's a very very highly requested feature. So yeah, gRPC would be coming very soon.
Good. That's it from my side.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question, guys? Cool.
Yep.
Sounds good. Yep. Thank you all for joining, and we'll be looking forward to the contributions, to your feedbacks, and have a good night and have a good day, whoever joined from the other time zone.
Yep. That's a wrap.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
a lot, everyone.
Bye bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys, for the demo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.